Why earnings calls are the soap opera of business. So here's the thing. You think earnings calls are boring. Not so, my friend. If you speak the language of finance, know some basic vocabulary, you can listen to those earnings calls and all of a sudden it's like watching The Bachelor. It's the human intrigue. It's the excitement of business watching those earnings calls. So this is how they work. So every quarter, obviously, because they're quarterly earnings calls, right? Every quarter, every publicly traded company has to get on an earnings call and report and take questions from analysts. The first portion of an earnings call is usually the prepared remarks. It's usually the CEO and the CFO. Not always, it can be other people as well, but the CEO usually gives more of a visionary explanation of where the company is headed, and the CFO wraps up with really boring numbers. And if you don't speak finance, that's the boring part, totally fine. Skip over the CFO's prepared remarks and just focus on the CEO's. You have my permission. So in the prepared remarks, what happens usually is you can listen in and tell how the company is doing by what type of metrics they report on. So if they are reporting on the obvious metrics like top line, revenue, bottom line, profit, gross margins, operating profits, and operating margins, all those terms that you probably already know, if they're reporting on those terms and saying we have increases here and we're hitting guidance here and we're doing well here, then you know the company actually probably is doing well. If in the prepared remarks, everything sounds rosy, but they're reporting on really obscure KPIs or key performance indicators like we had in the Asian markets 3 points higher than expected in our corporate division, like really obscure references. You know what they're doing is trying to find any good news. They're trying to find anything that goes up and they want to report on that. And so that's what happens in the prepared remarks. You can usually tell how the company is doing just by listening to that and listening to what type of metrics they're reporting. The next section of the earnings call is the Analyst Q&A. And how this works is these analysts know these companies really well. And they will be on these calls again and again, and they will be very familiar with how the company is doing. They get the company results, the company financials, just a little while before the call. So they have to quickly scan those, read those, interpret those, and then they immediately jump onto the call and ask their questions. What you don't know what's happening is behind the scenes, the CEO and CFO have the opportunity to move those questions around. They can see them coming in and they can say, okay, I want to ask this question first, then this one, and they can in real time change that order. The order is really important. They want to ask generally the easy lowball questions first, right? Let's get us started, let's get us warmed up, let's start out with good news. And so they take the lowball questions first. Then they put the hard questions in the middle generally. So you'll watch, if you start paying attention, you can almost skip to the middle if you're reading a transcript, you can skip to the middle of the Analyst Q&A, and those are the hardball questions, and then they usually end on a soft note as well. So we can end happy again so that it won't impact the stock market price that negatively. That's what they're hoping for anyway. What's so interesting though is it doesn't always follow that format. I love following Tesla and the lovely Mr. Musk, and the last earnings call that I listened to with him, hilarious actually. He took the hardball question right up front and he used it to his advantage. This is what happened. An analyst had asked him a question. The question was, Mr. Musk, you aren't very accurate in your predictions. In the past, you've told us that this would be launched a long time ago. They were talking about self-driving vehicles. He said, this would be launched a long time ago and you've been wrong a lot. Tell us why we can trust you now. Pretty hardball question. He took that as the first question. And I was like, woo, brave. How's he going to answer this one? And this is why people follow Elon, right? He said, I'm so glad you asked me that question. I want you to experience it for yourself. I want you actually to go to this website and try the self-driver. He totally turned it into a marketing opportunity. Seriously, he took the hardball question, answered it first, and turned it into a marketing opportunity. If that's not like watching The Bachelor, I don't know what is. So if you want to be entertained, first, you do need to learn a little bit of the finance vocabulary. And then second of all, start jumping on those quarterly earnings calls of the companies that you work for, that you follow, that you love, and be more entertained than The Bachelor.